When we think of Rome, we think of white marble. We think of senators in pristine togas, of law, of order, of the greatest civilization mankind has ever known. We call it the Eternal City. But civilizations aren't born in marble. They are born in mud, and they are christened in blood. The true story of Rome's foundation isn't a heroic fairy tale. It is a horror story. It is a tale of child abandonment, fratricide, mass abduction, and calculated sexual violence. Rome didn't start as an empire. It started as a desperate asylum for the worst criminals of the Iron Age. Today, we are going back to 753 BC to strip away the legend and look at the brutal reality. How do you build the world's greatest superpower from nothing? Simple. You kill your brother and you steal your neighbor's wife. The story begins with a death sentence. 2 infants, twins, born of a forbidden union. Their mother, a Vestal virgin named Rhea Silvia, their father, supposedly Mars, the god of war. In the ancient world, illegitimate children of prophecy were dangerous. The local king, fearing a threat to his throne, gave the order: drown them. They were tossed into the Tiber River in a basket. But nature had other plans. The river, swollen by recent rains, didn't swallow them. It carried them gently to a marshy bank at the foot of the Palatine Hill. They should have died of hypothermia. They should have been eaten by scavengers. Instead, legend tells us they were found by a she-wolf, Lupa. Now stop and think about that image for a second. A wolf doesn't nurse human children. A wolf eats them. But this detail is crucial for the Roman psyche. It implies that the founders of Rome drank the milk of a predator. They weren't raised by human warmth. They were raised by the law of the wild. Kill or be killed. Dominate or die. Eventually, they were found by a shepherd, Faustulus. He took them in. But you cannot domesticate a wild animal once it's grown. As Romulus and Remus grew into men, they became leaders of a rough crowd. They were strong, charismatic, and violent. When they finally discovered their royal lineage, they didn't just want to be princes in someone else's court. They wanted to be kings of their own world. They decided to found a city on the very spot where the wolf had saved them. But a city can only have one king. And this is where the brotherhood ended and the politics began. They couldn't agree on the location. Romulus wanted the Palatine Hill. Remus wanted the Aventine. Being men of their time, they decided to let the gods choose. They turned to augury, divining the will of the gods by watching the flight of birds. Remus saw 6 vultures first. He claimed victory based on priority. Romulus saw 12 vultures later. He claimed victory based on quantity. The argument turned ugly. Words turned to threats. In a display of supreme arrogance, Romulus began to dig a trench around his hill. He called it the Pomerium, the sacred boundary. He declared that these lines were now walls, and inside them, his word was law. Remus, bitter and mocking, looked at this ditch in the dirt. He laughed. He famously jumped over the line, sneering. "Look how easily your walls are breached." It was a joke, a brotherly taunt. Romulus didn't laugh. To him, this wasn't a game, it was treason. In a flash of cold, efficient rage, Romulus drew his weapon and struck his brother down. As Remus lay dying in the dirt of the city that would one day rule the world, Romulus stood over him and shouted the words that would echo through history. "So perish every one that shall hereafter leap over my wall. Rome was minutes old, and it already had its first corpse. The foundation of the empire wasn't laid with stone, it was laid with a body. Romulus was now king. But king of what? A few huts on a muddy hill. He had a crown, but no subjects. To build an empire, you need bodies, you need labor, you need an army. Romulus was a pragmatist. He knew he couldn't attract noble families to live in a swamp. So he opened the gates to the only people desperate enough to come. He declared the Capitoline Hill an asylum. He sent out a message to the entire Italian peninsula. Are you a thief? Come to Rome. Are you a murderer fleeing justice? Come to Rome. Are you a runaway slave? Come to Rome. Here, your slate is wiped clean. I don't care what you did. I only care what you can do for me. And they came, in droves, the unwanted, the broken, the violent, the sociopaths of the Iron Age. Rome became a hive of scum and villainy, a city of men who had nothing to lose. Romulus had forged a terrifying weapon. He had an army of criminals who were fiercely loyal to him because he was the only one who offered them protection. But there was a catastrophic flaw in his plan. Look around this new city. It's 100% testosterone. It's thousands of men and 0 women. A city without women is not a city. It's a prison camp. It has no future. When this generation dies, Rome dies with it. Romulus, ever the rational thinker, tried to solve this politely. He sent ambassadors to the neighboring tribes, the Sabines, the Caninenses, the Christumeni. He asked for the right of connubium, legal marriage. Essentially, he asked, will you let your daughters marry my men? The neighbors laughed in their faces. They looked at Rome and saw a den of wolves and thieves. They asked the ambassadors with dripping sarcasm, why don't you open an asylum for women too? Only then would your men find suitable wives. It was a humiliating rejection. Romulus didn't get angry. He got even. If they wouldn't give the women to him, he would take them. This wasn't an act of passion, it was a military operation. He announced a massive festival, the Consualia in honor of Neptune, the god of horses and the sea. He promised spectacles, horse races, food, and wine. He made sure the invitation reached the Sabines. The Sabines were curious. They wanted to see this new city, perhaps to mock it, perhaps just for the free entertainment. They came in peace. They brought their wives, and fatally, they brought their daughters. The day of the festival arrived. The wine flowed. The races were exciting. The Sabines relaxed, their suspicions fading away in the summer heat. They marveled at the statue of Neptune, at the seemingly civilized hospitality of the Romans. Romulus sat on his throne, watching not the games, but the crowd. He was counting. When the moment was right, he stood up. He folded his purple cloak and threw it over his shoulder. That was the signal. Suddenly, the music stopped. The Roman men drew swords, not to kill, but to intimidate. They rushed into the crowd. It was precise. It was rehearsed. Every Roman grabbed a Sabine virgin. Imagine the chaos, the dust rising, the tables overturning, the screams of mothers trying to hold on to their children. The Sabine men, unarmed and caught off guard, were forced to retreat outside the city walls, cursing the treachery of Romulus. Within minutes, the festival was over. The piazza was empty, except for the broken pottery and the terrified young women, now prisoners in strange houses. Historians try to sanitize this. They call it the abduction. But make no mistake, this was state-sponsored kidnapping on a massive scale. Romulus knew war was coming. You don't steal a tribe's daughters without consequences. The Sabines regrouped. They marched on Rome, led by their king, Titus Tatius. The war was brutal. It is said that a Roman woman named Tarpeia, the daughter of the commander of the citadel, betrayed her own people. She opened the gates for the Sabines in exchange for what they wore on their left arms. She meant their golden bracelets. Instead, the Sabines, despising traitors, threw their heavy shields, which they also wore on their left arms, onto her. She was crushed to death under the weight of their contempt. To this day, the Tarpeian Rock in Rome is named after her, a place where traitors were thrown to their deaths. The Sabines entered the city. The final battle took place in the valley that would later become the Roman Forum. It was a bloodbath. The Sabines were pushing the Romans back. Romulus was losing. He prayed to Jupiter, promising to build a temple if the tide turned. And then, the impossible happened. The doors of the city opened. The Sabine women, the very victims of this crime, ran onto the battlefield. Their hair was loose, their clothes torn. They threw themselves between the flying spears and the clashing swords. On one side stood their fathers and brothers. On the other, the Roman husbands they had been forced to marry, but with whom they had now started families. They cried out, "If you want to kill someone, kill us. We are the cause of this war. We would rather die than live as orphans or widows." The fighting stopped. Silence fell over the valley. The kings, Romulus and Tatius, lowered their swords. In that moment, Rome changed forever. They didn't just sign a peace treaty, they merged. The Sabines moved to Rome. The two peoples became one. This is the lesson of Romulus. It is a cynical one. He proved that survival often requires monstrous acts. He killed his brother to secure his borders. He stole women to secure his future. He didn't rely on morality, he relied on efficiency. Rome became the eternal city, yes, but the foundation of that eternity was built on the bones of Remus and the tears of the Sabines.